Beat on them real quick. We are moving them. They're in the chat right now. They're not tough. They're not math. And we're going to start with this Simpsons video.
Conflicts and space missions to solar cars, AI takeovers, and environmental disasters. It's starting to feel like their episodes were more prophecy than parody. Most of these predictions are unbelievable, but already playing out before our eyes. Want to find out what these predictions are? Join us as we break down some of the Simpsons predictions for 2026, an escalated US-China clash, colonizing Mars. Solar cars are finally hitting the road. Virtual reality everywhere. An environmental disaster. AI and robots taking our jobs. Holograms are the new text message. Out of control, self-driving cars. Which of these predictions sounds unbelievable? Kindly share your answers, thoughts, and opinions in the comments section.
And that's a quick prediction snippet. If you're not familiar with the predictions for The Simpsons, you definitely should check it out. Here we go.
Hey, are you Ian Nethercott, the host of the Auto Hub Show?
All right.
Life is about connection. Having a support system to lean on. And roads to endless possibility. At every turn, guiding the way, we are building the connections that move you.
Hey, I'm Vince Delmonico, General Sales Manager with Cruise Ford Lincoln. Larry Feldman came out and did one of our training courses. Absolutely incredible. I sat through the course myself. The engagement that our salespeople gained from it, the excitement that he brings, it was a new way of looking at things that we're already doing and how we can improve them. Love it. It's literally the best thing since sliced bread.
How do you adventure? Is it fast? Is it free? Is it clear? Is it rugged? Is it remote? For your next adventure, trust MotoClose for buying, selling, trading, and protecting all of your motorized assets. Powered by Disclose Dealership Management Dashboard, your all-in-one DMS, CRM, menu, lead gen, inventory, staff, client, and deal management solution. Disclose DMD, like a DMS, only better. Mention promo code AutoHub2025 to get special pricing, including waive setup costs, no contract, and your first month's free.
Meta, Instagram, social, and your team is still waiting for ups like it's 1999. Let's be honest, your market isn't watching TV commercials, they're double tapping and engaging with your competitors on social media posts. People are shopping these days for cars and servicing their vehicles in between watching cat videos. That's where we can help. Retail Resilient is the go-to authority for social selling in the car industry. Whether you're a new car franchise dealer, an independent, a buy here, pay here, a broker, a dealership owner or manager, we have something for you. Remember, when your lot is quiet, it means your social media is not loud enough. Check us out at retailresilient.com so we can retarget you on our social media feeds.
Come on. Oh, move that way. Good morning and welcome. Sorry, I'm just playing around with new features on StreamYard this morning. So we have a number of new guests this morning, and I'd like to start with the first victim or the first person who arrived, and that was Nick. So Nick, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what you do, who you are, and more importantly, answer the first question. Are you taking advantage of the recall opportunity in 2025, 26?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I really appreciate you having me on. My name is Nick Shavinsky. 25 years total in automotive. I spent the first 20 years on the dealer side in dealership, mostly on the variable side, but worked shoulder to shoulder with fixed ops. We all learned really on in the business that service is what keeps the lights on when margins start to compress on the retail side. That's for sure. So after that, I moved over to Cox Automotive. I was 5 years with the auto as a performance manager, so helping dealers optimize there. Now I'm at Savvy Dealer. We're a digital marketing and website company. And so I think recalls sit kind of right at that intersection of service, sales, and marketing. So I'm kind of excited to dig into this and especially with a couple of the other guests that you got on here and learn from them as well. So yeah, I mean, when you ask that question, are dealers taking advantage of the recall opportunity? I mean, you got to think about the scale of it. Like 1 in 4 vehicles have an open recall. So it's not a niche opportunity. It's like 25% of your market, right? And most dealers, I think they leave money on the table with more of like a spray and pray approach, right? Thinking about, just sending like the notification from the manufacturer doesn't work anymore, right? Because you've got customers get overwhelmed. I mean, think about all the text messages you get. I get from the sporting goods store, from everybody, right? So, you got to make your messaging clear. But, I think the other part of the recall opportunity that we got to be taking advantage of would be that the recalls they're not just really a hook. It's not just really a repair, right? But the real value isn't necessarily the warranty reimbursement itself. It's that customer relationship. It's the opportunity to upsell from service. It's the opportunity to potentially sell another car. Fixed ops is becoming more and more critical. Margin compression. I mean, it's back, right? People are going through it, right? So I think every recall customer is someone maybe who needs to hear from you based on your safety. I mean, if you're not reaching out to them, your competitor is, and then they're building a relationship with them. So yeah, I think that's really where the advantages are in taking advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, the word I always use is it's a free safety upgrade for your car. Is that something you want to do today, or you just want to hope that it doesn't cause a problem? Not saying it will. Ron, maybe you can tell me a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and more importantly, do you think dealers are maximizing the recall opportunity in 2025, 2026?
Well, first off, the answer to your question is absolutely not. But yeah, my name is Ron Scorado, and I am the owner of Blue Gorilla Digital, a marketing agency for dealerships. I've been doing this for car dealers. I've been doing marketing for a long time, but for car dealers for almost 30 years. And I also am a partner in 360 Auto AI, which is also an AI company meant to assist dealers. And Nick was spot on about what he said. Dealerships, I see it, and a lot of clients that we deal with, they treat service like a secondhand child. All right. And it's because of the nature of the dealership, right? The top of the dealership chain, the general sales manager is often in charge of your marketing or the GM, but they're so focused on their sales and their end of month goals, right? That they put their money behind new cars, used cars, depending whether they're, going after volume or they're going after gross. They have their own goals, but they usually involve sales and not service. And service is such an untapped opportunity for most if they just put a concerted effort together, right? And recalls is a perfect illustration. I mean, tens of millions of recalls every year, yet dealers treat them more as reactive as opposed to proactive. And putting a solid plan in place is just nothing but a golden opportunity for these guys to capitalize more on better opportunities to even go after sales by bringing them into service first. And that lure of free, like you just mentioned, is exactly right. I mean, if you treat it and you address the customer in the right way, you can get them in the door, and they're much more willing than when you call them and offer them a discounted oil change, right?
Yeah.
So yes, there's plenty of opportunity, but the answer to your question is no, most dealers aren't taking the opportunity seriously and not doing something in any kind of concerted, non-sporadic way to address it.
Yeah, even if you look at smartphone apps from car manufacturers, they're now noting there's a recall on your vehicle. And I think and I'm not someone who has anything to do with do not call us and that kind of thing, but most people who have a recall on their vehicle, that's a reason to call them and say, hey, did you want to fix that? Even if they're on the do not call list. I mean, it's a safety concern based on my understanding. Chris, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and what you think on the recall side of things.
Absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me. Good to see everyone on this call. Obviously, I know quite a few of these individuals and work together every day. So you've got to put together a great panel here, Ian.
Thanks.
I think that it's, for starters, it's crazy to think that only a third of dealers have some program in place currently to address recalls, right? And as Ron just mentioned, you don't have people putting in that same level of love and attention to recall vehicle owners as they can, when it turns out, if you do the right thing, which is obviously treating every customer like they're special and rolling out the red carpet, that recall vehicle owners, over half of them spend out-of-pocket customer pay money, right?
Right.
And it's harder than ever to bring customers in. So why would you not want to take this opportunity to bring them in when they can only have their vehicle serviced at a factory authorized service center, right? So this is your way to compete with the independents and those 70% of customers that are already going into the your competitor stores right now. And recently, you mentioned the do not call registry. Yes, because of the 2005 declaratory ruling, you do not have to scrub the from the FCC, you do not have to scrub consumers' names off of the do not call list. In fact, you're even allowed to call them using dialers and you calling prospects, people you've never done business with before. Not to mention using recalls to help meet your factory benchmarks and OEM guidelines that are out there. But one last interesting thing that's come up recently is the fact that you have had more voluntary recalls in the last few years than you have NHTSA mandated recalls. So you've got those recalls that kind of have risen to the level or hit the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's radar, if you will. And all of a sudden, those recalls are kind of pushed down from the government. Sometimes you've got the OEM bringing light to these situations, but you've got a lot of complaints coming in from the Office Defects Investigation, et cetera. And those are what are NHTSA mandated. But the OEMs have started recently to issue recalls sort of preemptively. And like I said, just in the last few years, the number of voluntary recalls out there have eclipsed those that are NHTSA mandated. These are simple repairs. Typically, you have a lot of electronics and software repairs of sorts, but we'll talk more about that. The point is there's plenty of opportunity, right? North of 60 million vehicles out there on the road with open recalls, and that certainly leaves a big market left to be addressed.
Yeah, I was also talking to Peter before the show started too. Thanks for that. That if you have a third-party vehicle on your lot and you can get the recall done on that vehicle, you can use it to help sell that used car going, hey, not only are we selling this used car that we don't retail new, we also got all the recalls done for you, so that way you don't have to worry about that. We got Larry on. Larry, maybe you can give us your thoughts on recall opportunities. I know you owned a dealership, but more importantly, you work with dealers. I mean, what's your thought on the recall front? Are dealers maximizing it?
No. And what's so crazy about it, if you think about the opportunity we have in fixed operations that not everybody's taking full advantage of. If you ask anybody that's involved with our industry, they'll tell you people are keeping their cars longer than ever, 12, 13, some crazy amount of time. But how many stores have a department or a part of their BDC dedicated to reaching out to people and saying, hey, we have a tremendous deal for you on a warranty? It's the same thing with recalls. It's a great opportunity to get people in, maybe upsell them on other services, maybe sell them another car. I just think, we always look outside as dealers for some magic potion. But most of the business and most of our opportunities are right within our service department and right within our sales department and our current customers. So I think it's a great thing that can be utilized a lot better.
Excellent. Peter, I mean, I know recalls are important, but what do you think on how dealers can really take advantage of that opportunity?
Well, I think the key is, and that's why I'm excited about the panel you have, because you've got some great people on there covering two areas. Number one is the website, which is a huge hole that needs to be filled by the dealers, and dealers need to start paying attention to that and making sure that on their website they have a check for open recalls on their website. And we talk more about that as we get a little deeper. So we've got Nick here, then we've got Ron from the advertising side talking about the advertising piece, because, and like it was mentioned, the dealers don't pay attention to this part of their business. And for some reason, and I come out of the advertising world too, I can never quite understand why there's always like, we're gonna spend all this money on retail to try and drive traffic, but we're not gonna spend any money on fixed ops. And as part of fixed ops, you've got the recalls, which is a great tool to bring the people back in. So it needs to be a little bit of changing of the dealer's mindset where they're taking their money, making sure that they're allocating a portion of their budget to make sure that they're addressing recalls properly, because the number of recalls that are coming out in this year, the last past year, has been mind-boggling. I've never seen anything like it. So it's a huge opportunity for the dealers to capture the market. And one of the reasons I'm excited you've got Chris Miller on the line is, being the data guy, Chris Miller's company, Recall Masters, has a way of finding second, third, and fourth generation owners in a dealer's market. So they need to think outside of not just the people they have in their DMS where their advertising agency can easily go out and market to them, but how they could then have their ad agency work with somebody like Chris Miller to be able to go out there and capture other people that did not buy the car from them, that are driving a vehicle that has to recall, because that's so much conquest business that's available. So if the dealers pay attention to recalls and start leveraging the tools that are available, and then Ron mentioned earlier a little bit about AI and some of the stuff that he's doing. And I know he's got some things that he's working on where they can make outbound calls. So there's all of this new technology that the dealers can use to bring more people into the dealership for sales and for service, but they need to start opening their eyes. So I'm very excited about the panel you've assembled for the show, because I think the dealers that are listening in are going to get a lot of very valuable information today.
Thanks for that. So what you're saying is there isn't a recall tracker on dealer websites as a common feature? Is that what you're saying? Wow.
The problem is there's a lot of websites, dealer websites, and then, my background goes way back with websites, that when you go to that link, you click on a link to see if your vehicle has a recall.
Yeah.
What the dealers don't realize, and I think Nick can expand on this a little bit too, is when they click on that link, if you're using an OEM link, and I'm sure Chris knows about this, if he's an expert in that part, but if you click on that link and the dealer has the OEM link on their website, so if, let's say I'm Reichert Ford, for example, and someone goes to my website, reichertford.com, and they click to see if there's a recall on my F-150, that information, that data goes to Ford corporate, okay? Ford now has control of that lead. Many times, Ford is going to send that lead to the dealer that's closest to that consumer. That lead came off my site at Reichert Ford. That lead should come back to me. That's my lead. So when you give the manufacturer control of people that are asking if there's a recall on your vehicle, you are missing an opportunity, because there's a very good chance that lead is now going to end up somewhere else. That's why you should have your own link that you control, like Recall Master basically has a private one where they can do that for you. You put a link on there. Nick, I'm sure, does it on the website that they build, but you need to control that person and provide them that information. Don't ever allow the manufacturer to have control of that recall inquiry.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I guess when you're looking at getting started with recalls, I guess the low-hanging fruit would be, can customers who are looking at your website every month look to see if there's a recall, especially if they're booking a service appointment for their car? I mean, what do you think, Chris? Do you think dealers are really taking advantage of this or no?
So this whole recall thing, one of the questions you're asking here is how can dealers really get started with this, right? Yeah. From the recall webpage to what they're doing to drive traffic in the service lane. Obviously, there's help on the variable side as well in terms of what the results of having a recall customer come in. But it all starts with data, right? And nowadays, there's more data than ever, but it's also more restricted and privacy regulated than ever. So a customer that comes to your website is obviously somebody that you've already captured at that point, regardless of if it's through your SEO efforts, your paid search efforts, through organic, word of mouth. They've already made it to your website. So needless to say, last thing you want to do is push them to another website, let alone the OEM website, where, as Peter mentioned, they will be redirected to the nearest local dealer after they type in their VIN. So certainly you want something like a recall webpage. Yes, our company, Recall Master, sets those up. Nick, if you guys aren't doing that already, happy to work with you. But when you set up a web page on the dealer's website, all of a sudden consumers can enter their VIN in. They can sign up for monitoring service, right? So maybe they don't have a recall today, but they've got one down the road. So you're providing some value add there. And most importantly, you're controlling that experience, right? And you're capturing that consumer information in case you want to use that for other purposes in the future. right? You've got a lot of lost inactive customers. I mentioned hitting your factory benchmarks before. You've got this organic traffic coming in and those new consumers through your website. So I think that's something that's very valuable to do. And once you get that data and you supplement it with other data, that's a good way for dealers to get started. And I'm happy to talk more about that when the time's right in terms of what dealers need to do to get off the ground.
Thanks very much. I had a comment from Terry Gibson. Customers often ignore or delay acting on recall notices because they do not feel personally at risk, find the notices confusing or low priority, and perceive the hassle as greater than the benefit. Psychological biases, trust in brands, and message design all play a role in weakening the sense of urgency. I think dealers need a marketing strategy. So go ahead, Nick. What do you think on getting started with recalls? Thanks, Terry.
Yeah, no, it's an awesome comment, and yeah, Chris, happy to connect and work with you, no doubt. I think just to touch base on the website, Peter's dead on. You don't want your customers leaving your website and going to an OEM to get kicked around somewhere else. Having it on your website, it's a warm lead you got. You might conquest some people that aren't in your database. There's an SEO play there, right? Because recall content searchable, so you got that. And AI search optimization, with AI-powered search growing, the ChatGPTs and Claude and the rest of them, having recalls and content on your site helps you to show up in those answers, right? So that's all really, really important, important stuff. And I think it starts to, for dealers to get started, it starts with the dealer's data. And I think this is probably something Chris is going to talk to, and something we work with our clients on a bit as well. Is, your DMS and your CRM only show you first-generation owners, but there is capability out there through third-party data to find the second, third, and fourth owners, and that really 3x's your opportunities with respect to this. So again, 50 to 60% of vehicles that visit dealers have an active recall that they want addressed, and I think maybe to Terry's point, and a little bit is that, the experience of it. So even if we're saying to them, hey, you've got a recall, if we're popping that in when they showed up for an oil change and expect to be out of there in 45 minutes, they're going to say no, right? I don't have the time today, or how long is this going to take? But if we've had that outreach ahead of time, right, and said, hey, you're coming in for an oil change, you've also got the recall, and set the expectation of what that's going to take. It's not scary. It's not going to take very long, and kind of build that through the process. It's one of the few moments where customers should actually want to hear from you, because it's typically urgent, it's typically safety related, it's free to them. So it should be a perfect storm for engagement when you think about just getting started with recalls overall. And I think the other thing is you got to think multi-channel, right? How about outreach is going to go, texting, email, direct mail, phone call. You got to layer in there, right? Postcards don't matter, and really important point. The do not call list doesn't matter with these folks. We can reach out and text all of them, right? Which is huge.
Yep, thanks for that, Ron. What do you think on getting started?
Without a doubt. Let's just go back to what Peter just mentioned about putting up that landing page up there about recalls and capturing those people to start. It's so simple to put a retargeting pixel on that page too. And now you're just hammering that person and giving them that refreshed message of, hey, you need to bring your car in and take care of this. And dealers, if you're a dealer out there watching this right now, I want you to think about one thing, and that's the mind of the consumer and the perception of the consumer, right? This is an opportunity for an upsell like no other, right? Because you put yourself, how many of us go out and put a $29, $39 oil change as a loss leader out there? Why? Because we know what it's going to do. A free brake inspection, a free check engine light inspection. Why? Because we know if they come in for that free item, we have a chance to sell them something else. And it's the same thing with recalls. Now you're giving them a reason to protect their family and themselves by fixing a problem. And now you're also putting that person in a somewhat psychological obligation to say, wow, they're doing this for me for nothing. This is free, and they're fixing it and protecting me. So when you say, hey, I just noticed your tires are worn, or I heard the brake squeaking when I pulled it into the service drive, you want us to check those, you're getting a golden opportunity to bring someone into the fold that you wouldn't have normally. And a lot of these people that have recalls have never had done business with your dealership, right? If you get a list, an OEM list, you've got a golden opportunity to bring new business to the dealership. And it's not just service business too, because guess what? Now that's an opportunity to convert that person to a sale. So if you work it right and you start to market it, and that's it. That's the key, marketing. I mean, look, Recall Masters, Chris has got a great program. Why every dealer in the country isn't on a program like that, I don't know. Because it's low cost, low hanging fruit, huge opportunity. Manufacturers picking up the expense of most of this stuff, and you have a golden opportunity. And yet, I mean, why isn't everybody signed up for something like that? That baffles me. And that's where the mentality needs to change from a dealer's perspective.
100%. I think I heard the word that Larry's all over on the sales side. So, Larry, do you think it would be useful for a salesman at a car dealership to have a list of the recall customers coming in today?
Of course. And as far as your questions why most dealers don't use them, they asked Einstein, what's the difference between genius and stupidity? And he said, genius has its limits. Stupidity, there are no bounds on stupidity. What we used to do is we used to offer a car wash, particularly in these times now where it's a little snowy and messy, while we get you in for a recall. You flavor it up, you get them in, you sell them tires, you introduce them, you may make a car sale. Again, it's just a simple, you're all right. It's an incredibly simple way to get somebody in. Not only are you protecting the consumer, you're giving your chance to establish a relationship or do an upsell.
Yeah, hands down. Peter, what do you think on the recall side?
Well, I love what Ron said, and the thing I want to mirror and emphasize is consumers today are specifically concerned about safety, especially the women. So when you go out and you let them know that this is a safety-related issue, and that's why, and I'm not sure who mentioned it earlier, but something was about the fact that you can make outbound calls using AI to do recall alerts, and it basically avoids all of those rules for making outbound calls, which is pretty cool. So now we've got something that is recall related. You can actually use AI and outbound calls to reach out to the consumers and let them know and not have any problems with all of the car regulations. But when you're talking to somebody, a consumer, about a safety issue, whether it be a husband or a father, and they're saying, look, hey, there's a safety issue about your car. You need to bring it in because that airbag could explode and kill the driver of the car. Now you're going to get someone's attention, but more importantly, if you position it properly in the marketing, and that's what I've seen done by several different dealers, they've done phenomenally well with that, is because they let them know, look, we care about you. We're trying to build this relationship. So the safety feature needs to be heavily played upon, because that right there will open a lot of doors. And now the dealer has the opportunity to build a relationship, because they're not always trying to sell something, but now you're trying to protect their family, which I think is critical.
You got to be careful about talking about empathy. You make dealers go cross-eyed at that point.
But it's true, Peter. Recall marketing is really trust marketing. That's what it comes down to, right? And this is a real big opportunity to gain trust from a current client, retain a client, or grab a new one.
And the last thing I want to throw in there is, my background, everybody knows I'm the email marketing guy. I do all the email marketing. Once you get an inbox, get the email in the inbox, the next thing is you need to get somebody to click. So when you're sending out an email that's safety related, and that person actually clicks through to go back to your website to see if there is a recall in their vehicle, you also just scored major points in your email reputation, your sender reputation. So sending out these messages, I know dealers love sending out marketing messages and sales messages, but most of those end up in spam. But when you can mix in something that they're actually interested in, they click on that link, it helps elevate your sender score, and it's going to improve the deliverability on all your future emails. So there's a lot of benefits with this whole recall marketing across the board.
Especially this time of year when you're seeing a lot of sales messaging on every platform from every different company. If you actually have different messaging, whether it be a phone call, an email, or a text message saying, listen, we care about you, but more importantly, this is an update you need to get on your vehicle for safety reasons. But best of all, it's at no charge to you. I think that's a great opportunity to do that. Ron, maybe you could talk a little bit. I know we talked a little about AI outreach. I think you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, we're doing it at 360 Auto AI in a big way right now, and the opportunity is there for the dealers who don't have the capacity. Look, BDCs are set up for incoming calls, right? Plain and simple. That's nobody in any department, in a service department, is making outbound calls for the most part. It's the service scheduler takes over once a call comes in. So who's touching these people? No, they're certainly not the sales department. And so we have it set up where the AI can make an actual, if you feed it with the right list and data, CSV file, you can make an outbound call, you can make an outbound text message, you can make an outbound email, all three of the above, and do it with persistence until that customer converts and comes in, right? So that's the opportunity. And I think you touched on it earlier, Peter, about safety and TCPA compliance. So the Telephone Consumer Protection Act dictates that any kind of an outbound call that's not by a person is usually considered a robocall. It does not hold true in the way of a safety related issue. So for a recall, it's a golden opportunity for a dealer to reach out to that customer in any way. Obviously, phone is a great way to do that. But now you've got a golden opportunity. They're saying, hey, we don't care who it is. This is your chance to stock up your parts department, to be able to tell a customer, hey, we have this problem. And not only that, but we have the fix for it. And all you need to do is set an appointment and tell us when you want to bring it in and get it fixed. And we've got these openings here, here, and here for you. You're giving them everything to make it easy for the customer. And if you do that as a fixed ops director in your department, you make it easy for the customer. Hey, your numbers are going up and your GM's looking over your shoulder saying, what'd you do? You just increased business by 20% last month. What the heck happened? Well, gosh, guess what? You did a recall campaign. And now you make it part of your diet, your daily service diet. And that's where a company like Chris's comes in, right? Who does that for a living. Most of us, even as agencies, aren't set up. We're not fixed ops experts, all right? We can do our bit of marketing to try to get someone, but you got companies like that know everything about it, know all the problems, all the questions that a customer has, all the things they need to do to fulfill this and to fulfill a dealership service pipeline with recall customers. I mean, it's a golden opportunity for people.
Yeah, I know that dealers like to focus on the sales side of the house, but boring is not necessarily a bad thing, especially when it generates revenue on autopilot, especially when you're looking at recalls, because these are a constant, or product updates. When I work with Mercedes-Benz, these are a constant. I mean, when you look at a vehicle like the Cybertruck, I think it's had 14 recalls in first year of production. So there are some definite opportunities. But Chris, when you work with a dealer who maybe is much more excited about the service, the sales side of the house and service, how do you get them to lean in and be interested in recalls?
Well, I don't think anyone's naturally wakes up in the morning and is that excited about recalls, except for me, of course. So that's a tricky part of it. And some of this comes into the question that was asked to you by one of your listeners there about how do you get somebody to act? So I was taking notes feverishly the last few minutes here. Let me back up 1 second if I could. Mm-hmm. When it comes to a dealer getting started and the first steps, the first thing they should do is study the Code of Federal Regulation 49, Part 577. You need to understand at least the basics of recalls and what the manufacturer requirements are, what the dealer requirements are. You also need to follow U.S. Code 15, subsection 45. That talks about unfair deceptive advertising practices. Yes, people that come in to fix their recalls are a great upsell opportunity, but you can't call them or make those robocalls and upsell at the same time, let alone tell them, hey, bring your recalled vehicle in and buy a new car because that one's a junker, right? People have gotten in a lot of trouble doing this sort of stuff. I think where the great opportunity is once you've got somebody there on the hook, they're calling in to schedule an appointment for a recall, or they're showing up at the dealership, all bets are off, right? So we all know, again, how hard it is to get consumers to come in. But this all starts with the data side, where Recall Masters first made its claim to fame. And what I realized 10 years ago now was that there was no centralized source that kept track of all the information related to the recalls, right? So even before we got into identifying a second, third, fourth, fifth vehicle owners and all of that, which I'll talk about in just one moment, is understanding the recalls themselves. When you speak to a consumer, this is back to that questioning, the comment came up from one of your listeners, in order to get them to act, right? You got to do a few things right. First of all, you got to be talking to them at the right time, right? Recalls hit all facets of the dealership experience, from those vehicles that are new to those used vehicles on the lot, even those owned by third parties, having cross relationships with other factories. If you do have used car business out there, right, you've got 3 times more used cars sold than there are new cars sold in the US, right? So it's important to keep those vehicles recall free. But speaking to them at the right time means that if somebody calls in and schedule an appointment, that you're booking that recall right away. You're not waiting until they're in front of you in the service lane already and then letting them know about the recall. And now all of a sudden, what they thought was going to be a 1 hour oil change turns into a 3 hour ordeal, right? So you need to make sure you get out in front of it, whether that's through text messaging or the web chat service on your website, or that's through your outbound efforts or through your inbound efforts. You've got to have this recall check integrated. And when you speak to it, because people aren't going to be that excited or rush to get their recall fixed, you have to know what the characteristics are of these recalls. Is it a stop sale? Is it a don't drive? That's an even higher risk recall. That means that you should basically be telling the consumer they should pull over right away and they should have that vehicle towed in if it's got a don't drive flag on it. Is it something that has a general safety risk, or is there actually a specific safety risk for a collision or fire related to that recall, right? Is there a risk of death? So one thing we do is we actually categorize the recalls on a scale of 1 to 5, right? You've got nuisance recalls out there, like a sticker on the car that needs to be replaced, maybe a warning label or a page in the owner's manual. But then you've got recalls out there that actually can, like your window motor catching fire, where you can have a 3,000 degree fire flare up in under 5 seconds. And then it actually makes it impossible to even open up the door and get out of the vehicle. That's where you have some catastrophic results, needless to say. So being able to speak to the specifics of the recall, we even rewrite the descriptions of the recall so they make much more sense, right? Toyota calls a thermal flare-up, also known as a fire. They've got that kind of legalese written into their recall communications, and that's probably not the best way to stress the importance of getting a recall fixed to a specific consumer. Next thing is, Nick mentioned taking a multi-channel approach, right? So just like a good boxer, if you want to take down your opponent, you're going to do like a combination A, get the couple jabs out there, then get that hook in. That's why you've got to take this multi-channel approach. You've got to be texting, emailing, direct mailing, calling, whatever it takes to get these consumers in, and you've got to do it in a compressed time frame, right? This isn't like a real estate agent farming who sends out the just listed, just sold, or in your area postcards once a month, and over 2 years you come to realize and recognize that agent's face. If you want to get a consumer in for a recall, you really need to make a concerted effort, and you got to focus on that list and that data. You got to do so every month. Again, because we're talking about recalls, when it comes to that consumer data, identifying those first, second, third, fourth, fifth owners, if you're working with the right provider, they can work with the utility companies, the insurance companies, the auto loan companies, the DMVs. Right now, it's possible to get DMV, and that's the protected class data, in all but about 6 or 7 states if you do it, which is crazy. We've never had quite the opportunity before to get around the Driver's Privacy Protection Act and get our hands on that data. And then if you're talking about utility company data, you can actually get up-to-date mobile phone numbers, email addresses, right? If you're gonna have a phone bill with AT&T or PG&E or Verizon or T-Mobile, they probably have the right phone number and email address for you, right? Because if you didn't give them the right way to contact you, you're gonna get your services shut off at some point, right? So coming at that information in order to identify both new customers and identify those second, third, fourth, fifth vehicle owners, maybe those that are lost customers that you don't have up-to-date contact information for, is all part of that initial effort to make sure that you're starting at the right place. Sorry for talking.
No worries. Thanks for that. That's lots of great information. Larry, I know you're a detailed guy and you know all this information better than most. What's your thinking on this opportunity, I guess you could call it, with all this data? I was a little overwhelmed with just the amount of data you can get. Go ahead.
Well, the gentleman that just spoke was 100% right. First of all, you need to be really organized. Does it stun you all like it stuns me how disorganized dealerships are? How there's this tremendous disconnect between variable and fixed operations. You need to be organized. Again, I tell salespeople, I do a lot of sales training, gentlemen, and I tell salespeople all the time when they complain there's no business, when was the last time you were in service? It's not sexy, but the thing that wins is process. And to have an organized process where you know who needs what you're trying to sell and how you're going to package it. And I think we'll all agree, without consistency, you're dead. If you do this, right, if you have 10 processes, you have no process. So I just think it's a matter of that. Other than that, as far as your comments, I noticed you were throwing your hands up. I'm from Philadelphia. We actually like the left hook better because Joe Frazier could handle everybody except George Foreman. And as far as the morons, and I use that term advisedly, that try to sell a car at the same time as they're doing a recall, that's basically sex without foreplay. It doesn't really go too well. Your partner is usually not as conducive.
Can I say, Larry, would you guess that if you handle the recall process right, and you do not, as you say, jump into the vehicle sale right off the bat, that we find 1 in 10 recall vehicle owners will actually purchase a vehicle from that dealership within the first 30 days of that recall vehicle?
That's because we found it out when we were teenagers and we were trying to date. We find it out when we're trying to sell. When you look somebody in the eye and say, please take this, they don't want it. But if you open up with, hey man, whether you buy or not, it's okay. Let's just have some fun. You sell a lot of vehicles. Nobody likes to be pressured. And when you've got an opportunity that's purely altruistic, hey, all we want to do is make sure your car's safe. Let's get you in here. It gets easy.
And imagine what happens when somebody calls in. We're talking about how it's hard to bring the customer in these days. Imagine when it comes to mobile service, right? Identifying those vehicles that are serviceable via a mobile or remote van you might have out there. That adds a lot of value to the consumer experience. But what we find happening also is you can have pickup and drop off service, and you might even give somebody, and typically how that might work is they'll drive a vehicle out to you and then they'll take your car back and repair it. But imagine somebody's driving a 2018 around and you show up with your 2026, Ford Mustang, whatever it may be, and all of a sudden they get to drive around that brand new car for whether it's a day or a couple days or even a few hours, and then you drop off their 7-8-year-old vehicle with them again. All of a sudden you've given them a little taste of the experience, and you're like hands off. So using even the loaner vehicles as a kind of, what would I say, low touch or soft touch opportunity starts to get that message across very quickly. Not to mention when you do things like providing a free car wash and a multi-point inspection, all of a sudden consumers start to see the difference and the value in factoring at that service center. And we see that, again, 70% of people that service their car regularly at a dealership end up buying from that dealership when their car comes off lease or out of warranty.
Listen, you've hit on something that's crucial. What, if you don't mind me asking, what state do you live in?
I'm in California.
Okay. I've been to California, and like Philly, where I'm from, you have a lot of Dunkin' Donuts. And I noticed something really interesting. There's 3 Dunkin' Donuts in my area that closed. Now, they didn't close because people don't want coffee. They closed because they were in a strip mall and you couldn't provide a drive-through. There wasn't enough functional room. So if even Dunkin' Donuts, if people are at a point in their life where they're too lazy or unmotivated to get the hell out of their car to get a cup of coffee, it's telling us that if we don't approach them, it's the accelerated hangover from COVID. If we don't come to them, if we're not accessible, if it isn't easy, we're dead. Listen, is there anybody that loves Amazon? Oh, it's terrible. They put little stores out, but everybody uses them because you hit a button, and the next thing you know, you've got your product. So you're 100% right. We've got to make it easy. We've got to make it accessible. And hey, you're right. They got a 2018. It rattles. It makes a strange noise. It smells funny. Here's a brand new car. You're subliminally programming them to want it.
100%. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, no, that's all great points. And, the numbers, I think it's 60% of recalls can be completed mobile, right? And so you think about some of the, what are some of the walls you're running to as a dealer? Well, do I have the bays to be able to fit these recalls in, this extra work, right? What do I do there? I mean, if 60% can get done outside of the store, like that frees that up a lot. I think the other thing that I've heard from dealers in terms of the recalls is some pushback maybe from, because recalls are more of a nuisance for the service writer than an opportunity. More of a nuisance for the tech, right? Let's face it. Sometimes those recalls, they don't pay the same hours as a customer pay job pays, right? So you got to overcome some of that stuff. I think those are real opportunities, but I think that changes because the first thing you got to do is figure out like the right mindset and the right culture around it. And I heard the guys use a word. It's really important that there's a distinction. So you have to have the right process because it's not a project. I think a lot of dealers look at this like it's a project. This isn't a one-time thing. This is a process. This is something you got to be able to replicate, do consistently with your people. And I think it was Chris that said, you think about that mindset and getting people to come over to your side. I think it was Chris that said 50% of the people that come in for a recall, what they're seeing is 50% of them do sign for some sort of upsell or customer pay work. 50%. So, every other recall, I'm going to get a customer pay job. I mean, I'd sign up for that as a service render or a technician. I just don't think that maybe that information's out there, right? And get in front of those people to get them on board because, you need those boots on.
And look at the dollar and cents of it. Obviously recalls in general, they're paying at a slightly lower rate, right? Because maybe they want to get the repair done in an hour, right? The manufacturer set it up so that we give you the part, make the fix as easy as possible. So your recall might pay $250, but when you get that customer pay work done, it might be $500. So what happens is even though every other customer is getting customer pay work done on the recalls, if you look at the dollars and cents wise, we actually see that there is more customer pay revenue generated from our program than there is warranty revenue.
There's no profit in quick lube. But the thing is, how many customers do you lose because you can't get them in and out quickly? If we don't keep the people in our base, you got no chance of making any money.
100%. I mean, when you look at the amount of work that dealers have lost to third parties over the last 30, 40 years, just because they're not paying attention to that customer, not making it easy. When you look at recalls, that's a good example. You got to not only have a process, you have to have the parts in stock. And if you are interested in mobile service, we are doing a show next week on that, which will give you some thoughts there. But go ahead, Peter.
I'm glad you mentioned mobile. We were talking about that. Mobile is another great tool. And I was with a dealer early in the year, and they have a huge mobile department. And I was in their office, and they had a little thing for the SIP, and it said, new customer. I'm like, okay, I got a mobile truck out of somebody's house. How are they getting a new customer? Well, they put a SIP in there for their mobile service tech that while they're there, they say to the customer, hey, do you have any other, if say it's a Ford dealer, do you have any other Ford products? I can check to see if there's any open recalls on that particular vehicle. And they're like, oh, well, my son drives a Mustang. Well, what's his VIN number? They put it right in there. And literally this dealer was generating a lot of additional revenue and business by using the recalls and giving a little spiff to his guy who's out there with the customer on a mobile call, asking for additional vehicles that they might own. And he told me that they were bringing in a lot of vehicles that they did not sell, but they were out there dealing with the one vehicle they did sell, and they're picking up other businesses, especially if you look from a commercial standpoint. Now you're a commercial fleet guy, you're out there doing commercial fleet mobile service. Well, they probably have 20, 30, 40 vehicles. Now you're able to run recall, reviews on, pull up the recall reports for all of the other vehicles. It's a great way. There's so many different ways that you can expand your business leveraging recalls. It's just phenomenal.
Plus, if you're making it easy, go ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
You mentioned something earlier. Chris mentioned something, and it struck a memory to me. Not a good memory. So if you're a dealer, pay attention, okay? Because he mentioned something about how you sell or how you position this recall. And in marketing, I'm going to tell you right now, with the recall business, leave it to the experts, right? Because not everybody knows the rules and knows the laws. But pushing something that's not real or pushing something in addition to your safety recall is a definite no-no. And I can go back to, I remember this vividly because they were the biggest Chevy dealership in the world, I think, at the time. It was called Bill Hurd Chevrolet, Mr. Big Volume, he used to call himself. Gigantic dealership. He sent out about 10,000 direct mail pieces with a fake recall notice, just trying to get people to call in to ask about recalls. And the dealership was in Georgia, okay? Or maybe it was Alabama, and some of the letters went to Georgia. I don't know if it was the Georgia Attorney General, but they filed a $50 million lawsuit against the dealership. And they closed their doors in 2008. So 2 years later, they went bankrupt. And that's because they just did something in marketing. And I can see this. I have car dealers all the time where they let a sales manager go in charge of some of their marketing, and they ask you to cross that line between black and gray, right? If you don't do it right, you're going to get in trouble. So leave your marketing for your recalls to the experts is all I'm going to tell you. That's a big word of caution that your dealer.
I literally spoke with the Attorney General of Georgia's office in the last month or so and helped run our deal. One of the things we do as a company, at least the Recall Masters, is we help indemnify and hold harmless the dealers of our services, because we've been doing this, for 10 years, over 3,000 dealerships. We know how to follow that law so carefully. But that Georgia dealer you just mentioned was one of the ones that I found in the company. I looked at it, and there was amazing. There was about a half dozen people that had been sued. I think one guy even went to jail for a short time or sued into oblivion because they're running astray of the law. That's why I mentioned it was one of the first things you have to do. But one of the questions you had here, Ian, was talking about, in final thoughts and deals missing. A lot of the recalls right now are programming and electronics related. I just bought a brand new vehicle, and I'm like, theoretically a young tech person. I still don't know how to work half the buttons and electronics in my vehicle. On top of it, the highest proportion of recalls being issued these days are for programming and electronic and software updates, right? Yeah. What an opportunity to help build the relationship with the consumer, whether it's done mobily, PS, a lot of those recalls that are electronic and programming related can be done mobily or via flash updates. Some of them are even too big in size to even do over the air. So even these new vehicles that have over the air updates can't necessarily have those vehicles made over the air. So you've got to send out a technician just so we can put that little thing in the kiosk there. But mobile is a huge topic. I'd love to come to your show next week if you want, because that's something we're dealing with. I'd say it comes up on at least half of our dealer discussions and consultations is this mobile opportunity, because consumers just don't want to come into the stores anymore. How do you sell a car with that if you can't take consumers onto the vehicle lot, right? And that's where it's really important to talk about this multi-step approach of having the better data, knowing when that lease return happens, knowing when they're out of warranty, using recalls, which are effective, at least it's 20% of your consumers, right? Knowing when that recall hits, so that gives you a very high value touch point. And guess what you do even in the case with mobile? You come out and you give them $100 gift card good toward any service in the dealership. And all of a sudden, not only have you shown them above and beyond excellence on the mobile side, but you've just given them a reason to come back and visit you. And you're going to be like double thumbs up in these people's minds. We all know dealerships have a hard enough time with their Google Maps and business rankings and so forth. But this is how you start to turn the tide and get customers back on your side.
100%. I mean, when you look at the ability for show, even in service, even if you have an appointment, you still get a percentage of people who don't show up. But to your point, if I'm coming in and it's a software update and you're making it easy for me, especially during the holiday season, you're coming out to my house or my business and saying, I know things are hairy right now. Can we come out and do that for you? Nick, what do you think as final thoughts? We're running out of time.
No doubt. Listen, final thoughts. I think you got to think about it. There's 3 wins here, right? 3 clear wins. One, safety. At the end of the day, you're in the business of making people safe as a dealer, right? So every recall completed could be an accident prevented. So it's not just good business. It's good for your customers. It's the right thing to do. There's revenue, right? So we've got the math is there's 22 billion in uncompleted recall work nationally. That's a lot of money. 50% of your recalls are going to buy an upsell. Why not? Right? I think Chris said I saw 6 to 9% turn into vehicle sales. Chris is saying it's closer to 10%, 1 in every 10 to 10%. So it's not just charity. It's also smart business, right? And then I think, and Chris was just talking about this. This is relationships, right? Recalls are bringing customers you haven't visited in years. The average days since last service visit is 700 days. Think about that. 2 years since you've talked to the person you sold the car to last, right? Since that last come to your dealership. And gives them a reason to stay, right? So I think, as we're building these relationships through service and ultimately, you're helping customers stay safe, right? And there's really no better way to earn trust right now in this market.
Fantastic. Larry, final thoughts.
Yeah, final thoughts are, in 2026, the dealers that are going to succeed are going to work on the things that they control, and that's used cars, and that's fixed operations. And to have this many people that are out there that you can bring in, people you haven't sold, people you have sold, it's really a golden opportunity. And it's one of the reasons I'm so excited about 2026, because I think the people that are paying attention, that do dial into what all you gentlemen have been talking about, are going to succeed, because it's just think about it, lots and lots of untapped opportunity, and that's what any good salesperson gets excited about.
Thanks for that, Ron.
I'll sum it up. If you're not actively right now marketing to recall customers, you're leaving service revenue on the table, you're leaving future sales on the table, you're leaving customer relationships on the table. And they're not just a compliance issue, they're one of the most predictable growth opportunities available for a dealership. So I have one word for you: Nike. Just do it. Right? That's it. Just do it.
Fantastic. Peter.
Hey, I just think, I thank the guests that we had on the show today. You guys were phenomenal. I believe that the dealers walked away with an enormous amount of information. I recommend the dealers that are joining us today, if you've got more questions, reach out to our guests directly, or you can reach out to Ian or myself and we can put you in touch with them. Highly recommend you put a big focus for next year on recalls. It will drive your business. Right now, we know things are changing. The one thing that's always going to be consistent, people need their cars repaired. So if you want to keep those customers happy, focus on recalls, bring them back in, and we're going to help you have a phenomenal 2026.
Fantastic. And if you are interested in mobile service, we will have a show next Monday on mobile service. And Chris, happy to send you an invite to that show. If you are looking for great ideas, I love that one, gift card for dealer service. I thought that was a really great twist that I really like. And if you're on the sales side of the house and service doesn't interest you as a car dealer, 10% turn into vehicle sales. That's a huge number. And if you're not paying attention to that, I think it was 50% do additional service. I don't understand why you're not paying attention to that. Anyway, thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Thanks for adding all the value, and have yourself a great week. Bye for now.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays too. Bye for now.
Appreciate it.